Hello, my friends, visionaries, seekers of more. Welcome to Let's Talk. I am Shay Marville. This isn't just a podcast, it's a journey. Do you ever feel that persistent tug, yelling, whispering, crying? There's more for you. There's more in you. Are you ready to dive deep, challenge your beliefs, evolve your perspectives? Together, we'll explore the depths of self-discovery, unlocking talents, passions, and potentials, one conversation at a time. Sometimes I will remind you to unleash your greatness. Sometimes we'll have a guest modeling their greatness. Sometimes we'll meditate. So sit back, open your mind, embark on this journey to unleash what? You. Let's begin. Hello, my friends. Welcome to Let's Talk. On today's episode, I have a very exciting guest, someone that I have admired for a long time, Bobby Sahni. Bobby Sahni, who is the co-founder of Ethnicity Matters, and he has two other agencies that he'll tell us all about. But he's a media titan in Canada. He's been opening doors, asking different questions. He was one of the first people to recognize that multiculturalism and diverse people being in marketing and being in media are critical to our growth and to opportunity in our country. And he's a leader around the world because of this work. Bobby, welcome to Let's Talk.
Thanks for having me. That was a great introduction. You should be my cover letter when I'm trying to seek out new opportunities.
I'm going to be your hype woman.
I love it.
I'm so, I think this is the 10th anniversary year for your company, for your agency. Yeah. Can you just tell us a little bit about how you started and why you started this agency?
Yeah, most definitely. So the agency you're referring to is Ethnicity Matters. We are a multicultural marketing and advertising agency based in Toronto, but servicing clients right across North America, and I've even had a few global assignments here and there. So I've been in multicultural marketing for over 20 years now. The first 10 years I spent on the client side of the business, and then the last 10 years have been on the agency side of the business. And I often joke, I'm not an ad guy. I don't have that advertising pedigree. And the first advertising agency I ever worked for is the one that I actually started. So that's my disclosure of my experience within the advertising industry. But really, what it started, 10 years ago. When I was at Rogers, I was head of multicultural marketing at Rogers, and I was there for about 7 years, and really I was tasked with helping Rogers from an enterprise-wide perspective, looking at different products and services that Rogers has to offer, whether it's your mobile service, your television, your internet, your home phone, etc. Really helping multicultural communities and new immigrant communities make an informed choice and make sure that Rogers is their telecommunications provider of choice. So while I was doing that at Rogers, we had some great success doing that, and often was quoted in the media or speaking at different industry conferences. A number of other brands would start to call me and basically say, "Hey, you're the Rogers multicultural guy. Can we pick your brain? Wanted to talk to you about what's going on with our brand or our company." And this was happening right across the board. There were retail companies calling me. There were a number of financial institutions. There were government agencies. And I always had a willingness to help. I've always been a nerd for multicultural marketing. And I've just, within my nature, I like to help people. So I would always help. And it was actually around that time that two people in particular, it was my current business partner, Howard, and my wife would constantly be whispering in my ear saying, "You're getting all of these calls from people you don't know, and they're looking for advice about something that you know very well. Look, why aren't you turning this into a business? Why aren't you leaving your job and starting your own company. And I kicked around the idea for some time. I toyed
Right, right.
with it. And just for me, it was always about when is the timing going to be right? And I spent a few months after Rogers. I actually went to the Toronto Star for a short period of time, and at that point, I was offered another pretty senior position in a Canadian research company, where I would have been their head of multicultural research. It would have been a great position. Again, I'm not a research guy either, but I obviously have a perspective on the changing face of Canada and what it means
Right.
business in Canada. And I had a job opportunity right in front of us, ready to sign, fully negotiated deal. And then my wife, again, I credit her at this time, pregnant with our second child, actually said to me, "Why are you taking this job?" I said, "It's good for my resume. It's a good opportunity. And if one day I choose to start my own company, this is, a good foundation for that." And she said, "You're just making excuses." She said, "You're finding
Wow.
excuses not to start your business, and you're making excuse again not to take this job, or sorry, not to start the company. And if you hold off again," she's like, "I don't think you're ever going to do it then." And at that time, we were having our second child. So it was really her at that point that gave me that push to say,
Right.
leave the comforts of the corporate world, and bet on yourself, really, and see what you can do. And that was kind of the genesis of the company.
It sounds, though, like you are sort of an adaptive thinker. So wherever you are, you kind of like move and learn and grow within that space.
Yeah.
But was it that that was so natural to you that you thought, it's too easy. I've got to go and learn everything else that's hard so that before I jump into my own business? I mean, beyond the security piece.
You're 100% right. I mean, firstly, from my own perspective, I've always looked at myself as an opportunity finder, not just for myself, but for other people as well. I mean, that's what I do on a daily basis now for our clients, is really try and unlock new opportunities for them. But I think in the case, here, when it comes down to entrepreneurship in general, it's kind of the fear of the unknown. And, a lot of us, that haven't, you know, dipped our toes in entrepreneurship, you kind of don't know what you're getting into. And maybe you have this thought, your vision of what it's supposed to be like. And,
Right.
following other people, maybe you may have friends or families that have started their own businesses, or we've watched movies about these entrepreneurs that have changed the world. And we have this vision of what it has to be like. And then we think that, oh, I'm waiting for that sign or that moment or that reassurance that now I'm doing it and this is the right time to do it. But I think that was a big part of it for me as well, where I was like, is this really my time to quit my job, my great jobs that I've had in the corporate world, and kind of do my own thing. But my advice to other entrepreneurs is the time is never right. Like, you just got to
No.
go with your gut and what feels right to you. So
Well,
yeah.
I'm curious though. I mean, and you alluded to it in the beginning. Um, Corporate advertising and media in Canada. I'm going to go out on a leap and say it's kind of a closed ecosystem. Like you've got some top agencies that I work for one of the most amazing agencies, but it is uh, performance art, which is a part of McCann World Group, which is a great organization and network. However, that's not a plug for them, but it's kind of a tight little ecosystem of agencies. How do you get the guts and the foresight to say, I'm going to enter into this ocean here that where people don't typically at the top look like me,
Yeah.
and don't cater to the idea of ethnicity and multiculturalism?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point, and I would say, all the conversations I've had throughout my career, to be honest, even growing up as a child, I've always been the outsider in a lot of cases. I grew up in Brantford, Ontario, Canada. At the time was not the most multicultural city in Canada.
No.
I spent 2 years in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario.
Wow.
Again, not the most multicultural city in Canada, but I've spent a lot of time where I've been the other guy. And to your point, I entered the advertising industry, a little bit of an unknown world to me. I've been doing a lot of work in sports and entertainment and hockey. Again, a little bit of an unknown territory for me. But what I have found is that if you have something of value to bring to the table, if you have a truly unique perspective that is going to help your peers do better and think differently, and ultimately, whether you're working for a for-profit or organization, a nonprofit, a passion point industry, whatever it might be, if you are bringing value to the table, then you have every right to be there, just as much as anyone else. If anything, you have more of a right to be at that table because you are bringing that diversity of thought that is so
Yes.
important, that is so important across the board in what we do. Like I said, the first advertising agency I ever worked for was the one that I started myself. To this day, I do not profess to be an advertising guru or an expert. And sometimes I'm at these industry conversations where people are dropping names of legends in the industry who honestly I've never heard of them, because I have never been that close to the industry as I have in the last 10 years. But really, like I said, what I've always brought is a very unique perspective with a willingness to help and wanting to help other people around me grow. And for that reason, I think that table ultimately gets bigger, right? It gets longer and bigger, and actually it brings more seats available
Yes.
to get those perspectives.
100%. And I think this is one of the things that excites me about you and about your story, because I think we are kind of conditioned to follow a path, whatever path that is, right? Like every path has like sort of a process, but we don't always fit in to the path or the process. And sometimes we don't know how to navigate in the world, and in the world of work, in the world of business and entrepreneurship, if we have not been in the industry or we don't fit into the industry. So I think, like, I identify with you as someone who's been an outsider in many ways all throughout my life. And I think there's lots of people who are outsiders trying to work in media, trying to work in advertising, trying to work in communications, and have a point of view. And I think that's like the fact that you have been around for 10 years, and now you've created other agencies and businesses out of the first agency, I think is incredibly admirable and exciting. And like you said, that table is much wider now because you're in it.
And I think to that point, authenticity matters so much as well. I can't fake who I am. I can't fake what I'm passionate about. And I think in the conversations that I've had, on this particular topic of multicultural marketing and really helping corporate Canada grow, I think my clients or my peers, even my colleagues, they see that I genuinely I'm a nerd for this topic, and I can't fake things that I don't know, but I'm going to double down on things that I absolutely do know, and know better than other people. So I think that the authenticity factor really has to come across as well to ensure that you're getting your spot at the table.
Can we dive into some controversial stuff a little bit? Like, what do you think the difference is between, and maybe it's not controversial, I'm just saying that, what do you think the difference is between like diversity versus multiculturalism? Because multiculturalism, when I was growing up in 70s, 80s, 90s, that was maybe mid 90s, that was a term that was used. And now we have evolved into diversity and not talking about multiculturalism as much.
Mhm.
Is there a difference for you as a creator in that ecosystem?
Yeah, absolutely. And we often make that distinction when speaking to clients. I say, for myself as an example, I am in the field of multicultural marketing. That is very much, from our perspective, an outward journey of clients wanting to develop unique strategies, based on cultural preferences and cultural nuances, that are going to ultimately help drive sales and growth for organizations. So the work we do, and I think the narrative is a little bit different when we're speaking to our clients. We're absolutely here to help you grow. We are here to help you sell more product and engage more communities with the products and services that you are trying to deliver. I think diversity from a corporate standpoint for many of us also is a little bit more of an inward journey as well. I think, I've always said that diversity for an organization, it's that inward journey and really trying to understand, how your workforce, first and foremost, is going to be reflective of the communities and the customers that you serve. I often say that as a country, we were becoming more and more diverse. So the inside of your organization needs to be reflective of the outside. That's
Yes.
the starting point. Once you have that diverse workforce, and again, that diversity of thought at the table,
Yeah.
the programs, the policies that you are going to start to generate are going to become reflective of that new reality and that changing face of Canada. So in a lot of cases, I'd say, in my world, multicultural marketing and diversity and inclusion, they are overlapping quite a bit, and they inform one another. But where we have really spent a great deal of our time is this end of the spectrum, which is about sales, growth, strategy, marketing, advertising, communication, effectiveness. But like I said, a lot of our other organizations are in this part of the journey as well, really trying to figure out, well, what does diversity and inclusion mean to us as an organization?
That is so interesting. That is such an interesting distinction because and I think actually that one of the challenges for many organizations that are focused on DEI or diversity is that they stop at, if they get there, they stop at representation within the organization and don't actually apply or know how to apply it to the business case and the mission of the organization, of the company. And so what you're talking about is beyond what's in. It's like, actually, how are you reaching out to the dynamic, complex, diversity within the society or within the demographic that you are focused on?
Absolutely, and I think one of the observations that I have made now throughout my career is that not every CEO in this country wakes up thinking about diversity and inclusion. It's just
No.
what they're thinking about. But I will guarantee the things that they are thinking about is, how am I going to grow my business? How am I going to sell more product? How am I going to cut costs? How do I engage my workforce? How do I build my business? And really a growth mentality, I'd say, in a lot of ways. So my job has really been to kind of hijack that part of the conversation and enter that part of the conversation and infuse the insights that I have from a multicultural marketing perspective. So what I want to talk about is top of mind. If I pick up the phone and call somebody and say, hey, I want to talk to you about multicultural marketing, I probably won't get a phone call back. But if I pick up that phone and say, hey, I want to talk to you about how I can grow your business, or how I can help you cut costs, or how I can help you engage your workforce, or how I can help you expand internationally, these are all different conversations that, to be honest, a lot of CEOs are going to want to have that conversation. So I think it's really important to make those type of distinctions.
Yes.
And while I may be a nerd for this topic, and while I may be, very passionate about wanting to change the world and make it a better place and more equitable, and where we celebrate diversity and all those things, that might not matter as much to the next person, and I can't force them to. So I have to control what I can control. I can only control my actions. I can't control other people's reactions. So that's kind of the way I've navigated this world.
I love this. I love this perspective, because I think you're tapping in directly to what most CEOs are thinking about. They're just thinking, and right now a lot of people are just thinking about how to survive. But talk to me about the specifically about Canada, about the top, like the big three. I'm referring to the population of South Asian, East Asian, Filipino demographic of newcomers, and how fast those markets are growing, and how you reach those markets.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I'll stay just for your viewers and your listeners. I'll kind of back up and say that really there's no country on this planet like Canada. We are very unique in so many ways. Obviously, we've got our Indigenous heritage that we need to recognize and reconcile as well. That needs to remain top of mind in everything we do. We have a very unique Francophone culture, which a lot of countries do not have that piece of the puzzle as well. We have our own Black history in this country, which a lot of people, again, don't recognize. And we have to recognize that really all of our future growth in this country from a population standpoint is being driven by newcomers coming to this country. Firstly, the reason, well, why are so many newcomers coming to this country? I often say it's a business case. And the business case states this: we're an aging population, number one. We don't have enough babies as a country. I'm doing my part. I've had three, including one in the last 2 years. So I'm doing my part to fuel that population growth. But because of that combination of an aging population and not enough babies, immigration is really a growth strategy for the country. And if it's a growth strategy for the country, it needs to be a growth strategy for every single company as well. So that's the macro demographic shift that's going on. Now, second thing that we have to recognize is that as immigrants are coming to this country, they're bringing with them unique preferences. It's a term that we use. We call it cultural baggage. It's not meant to be a derogatory term by any means, but it really just means that as you're coming to the new country, you are bringing with you, yes, you're bringing your physical belongings, of course, right? You're bringing your emotional baggage, and that can be your hopes and dreams for the new country. It could be your relationships and everything you've left back home as well. And
Yes.
The third thing is your cultural baggage, and that is really your frame of reference. That is, what do I know from my home country, my culture, my language, my religion, whatever it might be, and what am I bringing with me to this new country? And there's certain things when it comes to preferences that don't change. There are certain cases where that cultural baggage is handed down from generation to generation. I'm born and raised in Canada, but a lot of the choices that I make are based on what my parents have taught me, who came to Canada as immigrants as well.
Give me an example of that. And then part two to that question is that a preference or a bias? But give me an example first before we go down the other rabbit hole that I'd like to chase.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there's so many different areas where culturally people are different, right? The way they will interact with different family members or authority, your perception of time, certain mealtime etiquette and practices, gift giving. There's so many different areas. Your perception of elders, and what do they mean to your family? I mean, there's so many different areas of cultural baggage, but I'm just thinking out loud. I mean, my family or my parents' role in my house is very vital, as is my in-laws. It's a very vital role. it's very important for our kids to know and respect their elders, not us as parents, but really, their grandparents, and
Yes.
to understand, the sacrifices that they have made, and coming to leaving their countries and going to different countries and preserving their culture, their language, their heritage, and ensuring that we have those type of same values, and it's been passed down from generation to generation. Now, I can say that's a cultural thing. In many ways it is, but in a lot of cases it's about preferences as well.
Yes, yes.
Not
It's the
everybody.
same with my family. Same with my family. My mom, when she died recently, she was a
Yeah,
massive part of how our family functioned. Not just like part of the family, but part of the functionality of
right.
the family. And that's not necessarily a North American value, right?
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, when you go down to cultural values, you're borderline where another individual might say, oh, well, you're stereotyping, because not all Indian people think like that, or not all
Yes.
Jamaican people or Russian people or Chinese people think or do like that. But so it's not meant to be stereotypical, but it is a deep cultural insight that many of us may share as
Yes.
well.
And it may be that also maybe in mainstream we may um, ignore it or see it as invisible, right? Whereas what you're trying to do is look at the nuance and complexity of people's experience and their cultural values and how that can lead to preferences in what they buy, when they buy, where they buy, that sort of thing.
100%. I use you were talking about the top communities, whether it's South Asian or Chinese or Black or Filipino. I often say, or I'll have clients say, "Hey, Bobby, we want to reach the Indian community or the South Asian community. What do we need to do?" And I often will reply and say, "Well, listen, I am South Asian. My wife is South Asian. My mother is South Asian. But I was born and brought up in Canada. My mother immigrated to Canada in the 70s from India, and my wife was born in India, raised in Australia, and now lives in Canada because she married a Canadian."
Yeah.
All that to say, what I'm going to buy, where I'm going to buy it, why I'm going to buy it, when I'm going to buy it, might be different between myself, my wife, and my mother. So
Yes.
ethnicity absolutely is one point of data or one point of nuance, but let's not forget traditional demographic data as well that we need to layer into the conversation. So even our company, Ethnicity Matters, absolutely it does, because it gives you insight into the psyche of consumers in a different way. But while ethnicity matters, marketing also matters, and
Right.
traditional marketing demographic data also matters as well. So let's actually take the time to understand the cultural preferences, but let's not bet everything on,
Yes.
oh, well, Bobby's Indian, let's do it this way, because you're going to miss out on everything else if you just make it as simplistic as that.
Right. You're talking about the diversity within the diversity, right?
Right.
And that's basic marketing 101, demographics and all of that. That's so interesting. But you said something recently, I think it was a LinkedIn post regarding this being a moment for South Asian talent and in the entertainment and then also in sports. Like,
Mhm.
what do you mean by that?
I say this to my kids all the time. I said this repeatedly to my kids on the weekend because I feel like they are living in the best of times. As much as people talk about doom and gloom out there, and
Yeah.
in a post-COVID world and the economy and this and that, I tell my kids, I'm like, you are living, the best lives you can right now. And one of the references I give them, for me growing up, at one point, I wanted to be an actor. Not a lot of people know this, but I pursued drama all through university, and I'm sorry, not through university, through high school, and I did pretty well. And had an opportunity and had to make a choice of, hey, well, is this something I'm going to pursue after high school, or am I going to do something else? And had a very typical yet difficult conversation with my parents, but a very realistic one, where my parents reminded me and said, look, you are a very visible minority in Canada. And the sad reality is there's not a lot of roles, whether it's in film or television or whatever it might be, for people that look like us. And it was a sad reality, but it was a reality. And I never did pursue it after that. And I went down and, pursued sciences and business and everything else. And the rest is history. But when I look back now, I look back at that moment and the way I felt that, hey, I'm being held back, or I felt like I was being held back because of a lack of opportunity. Fast forward to where we are today, there is so much opportunity now, and will be continue to be created because the face of this country is changing so much.
Yes.
When I tell my kids now, if you want to pursue film, television, music, sports, arts, whatever it might be, there is a market for it now. And you can absolutely be successful. Not to say that people, in my time that pursued it are not successful. They absolutely are. But it was and it was a struggle.
It was different. It was very different. And the access to opportunity was very different. And 100%. It's not that it's easy now. It's just that it's more plentiful, but you also have to be very intentional.
100%.
Something I hear a lot, and it troubles me, and we talked about this about a month ago when we chatted. It's a very challenging situation for a lot of newcomers who are professionals, who are educated, who have come from, not every newcomer that comes here is coming from struggle. They're coming, like you said earlier, because this is a great business, the case for being in Canada, as opposed to being somewhere else in the world. It's better here than anywhere. And so people are coming here for opportunity, for safety, security, opportunity. But then they come and they're asked to step back from who they are professionally, or who they've been professionally. They have to take lesser positions. And that really plays with somebody's sense of worth and their identity. It's very complex, this whole idea of Canadian experience, which really, I think, is a bias. I think we have to get rid of that term, I feel. But what are you like? How do you engage with this idea?
Absolutely. And I spend a lot of time on this topic. I volunteer a lot of my time speaking to newcomers. I'm actually speaking at a conference this week, speaking to internationally educated professionals on this very topic. My view on this is that there needs to be conversation on both sides. And what's happening today is there is focus on helping newcomers integrate and settle within Canada. And I've seen many settlement agencies that will be handing out, the same resources, the same guides, helping, newcomers to how to write your resume and how to conduct an interview and how to write a cover letter. And all of that to me is table stakes. I think one thing that has to happen amongst newcomers is they need to help reposition their skills and their value that they have in this market. To your point, it can't be about, well, you don't have Canadian work experience and therefore you're not qualified for this position. You need the newcomer, the prospective newcomer that has the opportunity presented in front of them needs to be able to have that conversation and say, actually, if you look at the face of this country and how quickly our population is changing, the skills and the experience that I bring to the table are very different and diverse from anyone else that you might be speaking to that hasn't worked or lived internationally. I actually think I have a leg up on this position or this country because I bring a perspective that not a lot of other people do. I will absolutely learn and get my Canadian experience, but will your other candidates that don't have international experience, are they going to be willing to leave the country and go work in another country to understand a different perspective? That's kind of the reinvention that needs to happen on the prospective candidate standpoint. Know your worth, know your value, be able to position yourself as someone who can bring a value add to an organization or an opportunity versus being shy about not having Canadian work experience. On the other end of the spectrum, though, and I think, in my opinion, more importantly, there needs to be more of a conversation within corporate Canada, within leadership ranks and everyone else, to talk about why they need to hire those diverse candidates. That if they don't have Canadian experience, so what? They have international experience, which is something you need, because that is going to be, in time, more and more valuable and more reflective of that population change that's going on. So 100%. That's where the conversation has to take place. People have to get a little uncomfortable. And look, I'm an employer myself, right? I review resumes and I interview all the time. And I get it. What happens with a lot of decision makers and employers and in management, you tend to hire the safe bet, right? You tend to hire the person that has experience that is directly related to the job that you're trying to fill, because you want to get them up to speed. You want them to get going and do their job and be successful. Or you may have comfort that, hey, they've come from the same college or university as I have, or we know 10 of the same people, or whatever it might be. And I get it. That's human nature.
Absolutely.
But if I'm going to think strategically as a business leader, I'm going to think, well, I need people in my organization that have skills that we don't have right now, or connectivity and experiences that we don't have right now. So I'm going to be intentional about hiring people that don't have so-called Canadian work experience. And I want to unleash their superpowers into my organization and into the Canadian economy and the Canadian workforce with something that we haven't seen before. So I've got a lot of philosophies on this, and I could talk 2 hours on this.
I know.
The way I think about this topic.
I love this topic, and I think we should talk 2 hours, and we should talk more and more about it, because I think corporations are struggling, and I think a lot of individuals who are parts of families who came here to make a better life are really struggling. And just, if I could go back to your point about what the corporation should do in terms of embracing, uniqueness and embracing people's experience, their international global experience. I think in doing so, it also means that you have to be very thoughtful about the time frame, and whether you have the support mechanisms, and whether you have the patience, and actually putting those things in place so that you can allow for people to grow in their Canadian experience, but really fully bring themselves forward and feel confident and feel like this is a place for me to expand who I am. Then on the other side, I think newcomer professionals who are not new professionals, but newcomers, I think it's important for them to say, it took courage to come here. It took audacity to come here. Yeah. It took bravery to come here and to work in a place where this is not even my first language. That every corporation needs that kind of individual. Every agency, every organization needs people who are agile, adaptive, resilient. So I think we have to change the dialogue with newcomers so that they can start asserting themselves in that way and really recognize their worthiness.
And I'll tell you what happens if corporate Canada doesn't recognize that. There's a reason why in this country, small business owners, entrepreneurs tend to over-index on being from an immigrant background as well. Because on one end, a lot of these individuals may be getting shut out of opportunities that they are well qualified for, but aren't able to fit the mold that the prospective employer is looking for. On the other end, many newcomers to this country, again, they're opportunity finders as well. They can recognize the gaps that exist in the market and how to fill those gaps as well. I have seen everything from multicultural funeral homes to different lines of clothing to alcohol brands to cosmetics made for people of different skin tones. The amount of innovation I have seen by immigrant communities and multicultural communities to fill the gaps really that are left out there by corporate Canada. It's immense. So the message for corporate Canada is bring them into your fold. Otherwise, they could be your competitor one day.
Oh my God.
We're going, right?
Fabulous. Listen, Bobby, what is your next big thing? You're a leader. You're a creator of opportunity. The agency is growing. I know you're doing lots of speaking and, and parenting and making babies and stuff. What's your next big idea?
Yeah, so I think you mentioned at the top, involved with 3 companies today. One is obviously Ethnicity Matters, which is a multicultural marketing and advertising firm. We also have stake in a research firm called Cultural IQ, which is quantitative research, qualitative research, global benchmarking, data analytics, thought leadership studies. The third venture that we've started, it's actually with a partner in the US, and for now we're focusing on the US market mostly. But it's actually looking at the intersection of multicultural marketing and sports and entertainment. Something I'm very, very passionate about.
Obviously.
Is sports and entertainment. And I told you my entertainment background from when I was a kid, and I'm actually able to fulfill some of those childhood dreams of mine now. But again, recognizing the gap, firstly in sports, a lot of newcomers that come to Canada or the US haven't grown up with traditional North American sports like ice hockey or baseball or football or basketball. Basketball a little less so because it has been
exploded
really able to go global as a sport. So on one end, it's actually helping sports teams and leagues recognize the opportunity in engaging their future fans. Because like I said, these communities have not necessarily been exposed to these sports. So it's about actually growing the fan base for these teams and leagues and sports by engaging these audiences, but also from a brand perspective, helping them to understand that globally, sports like cricket or sports like soccer, are highly engaged audiences. In fact, the number 1 and number 2 sports in the world are soccer and cricket. And in the next 5 years, our hypothesis is that these sports are really going to take North America by storm. And we're already seeing it, obviously with the Olympics and various World Cups that are coming to North America. We're really helping brands understand that piece of the puzzle. So that's the sports side of the business. And then in entertainment, you and I and everybody has seen the focus, in Hollywood as an example of having more diversity really within the storytelling, within, who's behind the scenes and
Yes.
also on camera as well. So definitely having more diversity in film and entertainment and in music as well. So we're serving as a bit of a catalyst and connector there as well, helping global talent or multicultural talent engage with Hollywood studios or content studios or who it might be, or record labels or whatever that might be as well. So really looking at this intersection of sports, entertainment, and multicultural marketing coming together. And we're doing it in partnership. It's a joint venture, actually, with India's largest talent firm for writers, directors, and producers. That has a presence in both India and Hollywood. So stay tuned for more on that.
Outstanding.
Yeah,
Well,
very exciting.
that's phenomenal. So you'll have to come back on and we'll talk about that. But again, there's your unique insight into many industries and then bringing them together. I love this. Wow. Okay.
Absolutely.
Anyways, I know you're quite busy. I don't want to keep you. I want to thank you for your time and your tenacity. And I continue to be an admirer of yours, and I'm so grateful for your time today.
Well, thanks for having me. It was great chatting. And to be continued, for sure.
Exactly. Ciao for now, my friend. Thank you.
And so we wrap up another episode of Let's Talk. Remember, my friends, visionaries, seekers, self-discovery is your birthright. Each day, another step on this journey. Don't wait for the world to see the greatness in you. Recognize it in yourself. Embrace it and share it. And if today's conversation resonated with you and you're yearning for more, I invite you to explore The Marvel Way, a roadmap to personal growth at www.coachshaymarville.com and at www.shaymarvilleletstalk.com and at Shay Marville at Instagram. Listen, I'll find you, you find me. We inspire, uplift, and unleash our potential together. And until next time, stay curious, stay inspired, and keep unleashing the truth of who you are. Bye for now.